Hello there. So I'm back again, and I've called this particular talk How Monty Python Can Help Us, because just as I was getting ready for it, I remembered that song, Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. And I think that's such a true thing in a funny little song. And I've actually got a little tiny Demi-Tasse cup with that on it that I bought for my husband because he's someone who always looks on the bright side of life. And I'm very lucky because he comes from a family where that's the norm. And I just wanted to share a little story to illustrate what I'm talking about. So last year we moved house. We wanted to downsize and really reduce our mortgage down. There was one particular house that was in the right sort of price bracket, but we drove past it and looked at it, and it's so ugly on the outside. We thought, oh no, we don't want to go and look at that. And then by a sort of series of, shall we say, unfortunate events, but in actual fact turned out to be quite fortunate, we ended up having an appointment to go and see it. And we walked in, and as we walked around, I just thought, oh, this is exactly what we're looking for, because it had the space downstairs that we wanted and that we didn't think we'd be able to afford in the price bracket that we were looking at. So that was brilliant. But then we went outside to the garden, and it's actually got quite a small garden, and at the end of the garden our neighbour has planted leylandii, and so we've got sort of probably about 12-foot leylandii growing at the end of our garden, and it is very close to the house. And I sort of said at the time, oh, that's the only thing I don't like. And of course, there's not very much we can do because they're in the neighbour's garden. But anyway, we decided that the size of the house meant that overrode the smallness of the garden. And in actual fact, we aren't gardeners anyway, so a small garden isn't really a problem. But the reason I'm telling you this rather sort of long-winded story is shortly after we moved in, my mother-in-law came round to visit, and we were sitting in the sitting room looking out at the garden, and she looked at the leylandii, which of course I sort of am really conscious of and thinking, oh, you know, they bring a lot of shade into the garden. And she looked at them and she said, isn't it lovely? She said, because that bush there means that you're not overlooked at all. And, you know, I just think that's such a great way of viewing life, to actually look for the positives. And yes, she's right, we aren't overlooked at all, and it does give us a lot of privacy. And so that's one area where if you choose to focus, where do you put your focus? What are you going to focus on? Are you going to focus on the good things or the bad things? And so that's just a little story to illustrate what I want to talk about. The thing is because of the threat system, and this is what I was talking about last week, we feel threatened, and when we feel threatened, that's the one thing that we focus on. But what we need to do is to lower our threat levels down, because our threat system was really designed to help us get away from danger, from being eaten alive, for example. And our threat system is less useful in today's society. What tends to happen is we feel a threat, and then we tend to ruminate on it. We think about it, it becomes our focus. And what we need to do is allow the other parts of our brain to get active, to lower that threat system down. And those parts of our brain that help to lower our threat system down, that's called our rest and digest system, our soothing and affiliation system. And if you saw my live feed on the Good Enough Mum that I did on Tuesday, I talked about how I went out for a walk and it really calmed me down, especially as I was taking photographs to share on Instagram of all the lovely autumn colours. And that was a whole lot of different things going on for me there, because, you know, sharing my photographs, I was being creative, but also I was connecting with people as well by being able to share them. And connection is a really helpful thing. It helps us to lower our threat levels as well. And so it's really important to think about, where are we putting our focus? Are we going to focus on all the negative stuff, or are we going to find the positive stuff? And yesterday I was really tested in this. the first thing that happened was I was trying to describe to my husband something that I'm doing with my work, and I was trying to describe the difference between guilt and shame. And he was able to encapsulate what I was trying to say in one little sentence. And actually, I found that really annoying. Because the part of me that doesn't feel I'm good enough was sort of protesting and sort of saying, no, come on, you're the one that's supposed to be the counsellor. He's an engineer, he's a computer programmer. How come he's managed to say the way you should describe it? And you know, that not good enough part of me was sort of a bit cross and felt a bit patronised. But actually, when I stood back from it and I thought about what he was saying, I thought, actually, that's really useful. You know, I've been able to describe my dilemma to him in such a way that he's heard it and has reflected it back to me in a way that's really helpful to everybody. So why am I getting het up about it? This is actually a really useful thing to do. Anyway, the day went on and several things happened. I can't remember everything that happened. I'm somebody who tends to count things in 3. So the sort of thing with my husband was one thing. Something else happened, that was another thing. And then just as I was leaving the office yesterday, I was chatting to one of the other counsellors who told me that they've got a really busy day that day. And of course, I went into my sort of not good enough mode of thinking, oh, well, I haven't got that many clients. Does that mean I'm not good enough? You know, and I have a choice. You know, what am I going to choose to focus on? Am I going to choose to compare myself and focus on other people? Or am I going to focus on what I'm doing and the good that I'm doing? And then several things happened because I decided to make the focus on the good stuff and not the bad stuff. And as I went through the evening, things began to happen and I started to notice the good that I was doing. You know, I published my first blog yesterday and I was really excited about that. And just as I was going to bed, I opened my emails and had a really nice email from somebody saying how much my live videos had been helping them. And thinking about that, you know, it's so easy, isn't it, to focus on the negative, but how open are we to compliments? How open are we when people pay us a compliment to hear that and to say, yeah, you know, that's true, I have done that. It's so easy to compare ourselves. I was cycling this morning, as I've shared on the page, and this bloke cycled past me. And again, you know, there's that not good enough part of me is ready to say, oh, I've been overtaken. You know, I must be blooming useless. I'm not a very good cyclist, you know, and forgetting, of course, this is the first time I've been out on my bike since before we went on holiday at the end of August. You know, and the bloke that cycled past me, he was all kitted out with his lycra and his thin high-vis jacket. I mean, he's obviously a cyclist, you know, thighs like tree trunks. Who cycles for an hour every day? You know, why am I trying to compare myself to him? We just do it. You know, it's our threat system. It just goes mad. And the thing that can stop that connecting rest and digest soothing system actually lowering our threat level is the concept of shame. And shame, part of shame is that not good enough feeling that we get. Brené Brown says that that shame shows up in 2 ways. The first way is I'm not good enough. And the second way is, who do you think you are? In other words, you know, who do you think you are to be, you know, doing a live feed or talking at a TED conference as Brené was doing? You know, who do you think you are to, you know, to do something in your community? Who do you think you are to listen to somebody else at the school gate? Who do you think you are to want to chat to someone or to help them or to hold out a hand, to hold out a sandwich to someone who's homeless? You know, who do you think you are? But if we all listen to that, who do you think you are, then none of us are going to get out there and do anything. And so it's really important, I think, to focus on the little bits of good that we can do in our everyday life, and to accept that when people give us a compliment, that it's about being prepared to receive that compliment. You know, if people keep giving us compliments and we keep pushing it away, So for example, you know, someone can say, oh, you look really nice today. And you say, oh, this is a really old top. I got it from the charity shop. You know, how's that person going to feel? You know, they've tried to pay you a compliment and you're sort of pushing it away. So, you know, be prepared to accept the compliments. You know, when someone thinks that about you, they're not saying it to be nice. They're actually saying it because they mean it and it's true. You know, people say that about you because it's true, and have a look and notice what are the positive things that keep getting repeated about you. One of the lovely things we did on my counselling course is towards the end of each section of the course, we quite often did a thing where we had a list of everybody's names, and we wrote against everybody's name one thing that we really appreciated about them. And nobody knew what other people were writing about that particular person. It's a bit like Consequences, where you fold the paper over. And so at the end of the morning, you'd get this piece of paper and you'd unfold it and you'd see what everybody said. And what was quite extraordinary was how clearly your particular characteristics that people liked about you, how many times that would get mentioned. And so it began to challenge that thought that you have that you're not good enough and that you're not particularly skilled at anything. And again you'd see the same things coming up, you know, and it really did challenge me at the time to start listening, because if you're being told the same things by several people, you know what, it's probably true. It's not just people trying to be nice to you. And so if you can take that in, it sort of begins to break down that sense of shame. And if you can break down that sense of shame, then you can allow that soothing part of you to come through to your threats, to your threat level. And I am sort of making this quite a long live feed, but it's so important. And thanks for I can see who you are, who's joined, and thanks for joining me. Something else I was talking about with a client yesterday was, imagine you were taking your children to look at schools, and the first school that you go to, they're very strict, and they say to you, if your child goes wrong, we're really going to tell them off. We're going to make sure that they know that they've done the wrong thing. You know, we're going to be very stern with them, and we're going to tell them that they've really got to pull their socks up. And in fact, we might even beat them to make them pull their socks up. And then you go to the second school, and the second school says, you know, we really recognise that it's really difficult when you're learning. It's quite often the first time that you've tried something, and it takes a lot to learn a new skill. So with your child, when they make mistakes, we're going to find the good in them, we're going to encourage them, we're going to look at what they've done well, and we're going to challenge them in a gentle way to see if they can do better the next time. Which of those schools are you going to choose? Of course, you're going to choose the second one, because for your beloved child, you are going to want them to be encouraged. You're going to want them to know that they've got people behind them who are saying, you can do it, just give it another go, and don't worry about going wrong. You know, we all do that when we start out. So thinking about that, what do you do to yourself? Are you like the second school? Or are you like the first school? You know, do you beat yourself up when you've made mistakes? And if we do that creates this sense of shame in us, and it stops us from lowering our threat level. So what we focus on is what we become. And so the best thing to do in both in treating ourselves and with the people around us is to look for the good. To look for the good in our situations, you know, like my mother-in-law did with our Leilandi. Isn't it brilliant? You know, you're not overlooked. You know, in myself, you know, not looking at all the things I haven't done and all the people that I haven't helped, but looking at the one or two people that I have been able to help. You know, and in looking at other people, you know, what can you find about them? What can you say that you can find that you can really appreciate about them? And try and sort of tell them to pay that back, to say thank you for doing that for me. You know, so with my husband, when he, you know, he tried to help me with my description of guilt and shame, you know, actually, thanks for that. It's really helped. It's really helped to clarify it, and thank you for listening. Okay, so I'm going to finish there. Quite a long live feed today. I was going to make them shorter so more people get to see them, but there you go. So much to say today. So I'll leave that with you. And if you want to have a look at the blog post that I've published this week, I will actually share it to my Talk to Jo page. It's on the Good Enough Mum website, which is thegoodenoughmum.com. But I will share it to this business page, which is Talk to Jo. And thanks very much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye.